Hey everyone, welcome to episode 3 of To the Point. In this episode, we're going to dive into accessory dwelling units, ADUs, as one solution for our growing housing affordability problem in Dallas. ADUs are a technical name for granny flats, mother-in-law suites, above garage apartments. I've become convinced that ADUs are a significant solution and it's something that we can pull off relatively quickly and easily. So I hope that policymakers are watching this. So, in Dallas, our housing affordability problem has reached extreme levels. High opportunity neighborhoods are prohibitively expensive for all but the wealthy. Affordable options to moderate and lower income families are overwhelmingly located in concentrated poverty. And middle income housing is more easily accessible in the burbs than in the city. So on a day-to-day basis, many Dallasites are drowning in their rents and mortgages because it's getting very expensive to live in certain parts of Dallas, and because median income has been declining for 30 years. That's a bad combo. Today, half of Dallas renters and a third of homeowners are cost burdened, meaning that they're paying more than 30% of their income on housing, leaving less leftover income for other necessities like nutritious food, transportation, and healthcare. We obviously need a comprehensive housing policy, which Dallas has never had, but that's a massive and complex undertaking. We have to eat the elephant one bite at a time, and there are some immediate, relatively easy pieces of low-hanging fruit that we ought to consider ASAP, and I think ADUs are one of those pieces of low-hanging fruit. We would be foolish and unwise to ignore the concept of ADUs, and many cities have embraced ADUs as one strategy to keep housing affordable. So what the heck is an ADU? Well, like I said, they're called granny flats, mother-in-law apartments, above garage apartments. Basically, it's a second smaller unit that's usually in the backyard of a single family house or sometimes above a detached garage. It's defined as having a kitchen, a sleeping area, and a bathroom. It's a second dwelling, a tiny house, if you will. Now, for some homeowners, ADUs can make a lot of sense. First, it allows your family to age in place. When you're a small family living in a house, you can rent out your ADU to another individual or family, and that brings additional income from the renter, which can help you pay your own mortgage or maybe save for your kids' college tuition. So it's a win-win for the homeowner and the renter. The homeowner gets supplemental income, the renter gets something they can actually afford. As your family grows, maybe grandma moves in, maybe you don't rent the ADU out. Grandma can live in it. As you become empty nesters, maybe you rent it out again, or maybe you live in the ADU yourself and you rent out the main house to somebody else. This is all about individual homeowner choice. It increases flexibilities and brings in more revenue, which helps homeowners offset the costs of their mortgage, property taxes, etc. Now, considering a third of homeowners are cost burdened in their mortgage, this has powerful potential to really help people. But beyond benefiting the homeowner, having more ADUs in our city can significantly expand the number of affordable units for moderate to lower income people, for millennials just entering the workforce, and for seniors on a fixed budget, to name a few. It's simple math, right? A smaller housing unit is more affordable than a big house or a high-end apartment. ADUs in Dallas would give moderate to lower income folks an affordable option, particularly in higher opportunity areas that are zoned for single family only, which they couldn't ordinarily afford. This means instead of their only affordable options being located in areas of concentrated poverty, they would have affordable choices in high opportunity areas where they can gain access to better amenities, transportation, grocery stores, healthcare, restaurants, banks, stronger schools. I've often talked about the research of economist Raj Chetty, which shows that low-income kids who move to higher opportunity neighborhoods have dramatically better life outcomes. ADUs essentially diversify our housing stock to give people more options. But today, our land use rules in Dallas say that you can't build a new ADU and rent it to someone, even if you want one in your backyard for purposes of renting and supplementing your income. The technical reasoning is that you're only supposed to have a single family in that parcel of land. You can't have a rentable ADU because technically that would mean two families on a single family lot, which is a different zoning category, and so you can't legally rent it out. Now, if you can prove that your ADU was built like before World War II, that's grandfathered in and you can legally rent it out. But those are few and far between. You usually find them in the M Streets or Swiss Avenue, but otherwise it's illegal to build and rent them out. What this means is, as a homeowner, you cannot build a rentable ADU by right. This is an unnecessary regulation that stymies the free market, and it hinders individual family choices in Dallas. We should start thinking about being more permissive with our ADUs. Homeowners ought to be able to build ADUs by right throughout the city with some common sense rules and regulations in place. We need to start thinking more creatively and more flexibly about our housing affordability problem. Doing the same thing and expecting different results is not going to work. So here's how it could work. You change land use rules to allow ADUs across the city by right. So if you're a homeowner and you want to build an ADU, you ought to be able to do so. Let's empower homeowners. Austin recently allowed ADUs by right. They relaxed their regulations, and they saw over 200 ADUs in the first year alone, which isn't a panacea, but it makes a dent for sure. And it's generating economic stimulus in terms of construction, and it's creating more affordability at little cost to the city. Now, here would be some of the rules and regulations. And I want to thank Patrick Blades for thinking through this stuff and teaching me about it. And he created a really great framework that I'd like to share. So you allow ADUs by right throughout the city, but you have a size requirement. You basically say that the ADUs must be smaller than the main property. You also control for the quality of construction, and you make sure that the designs are aesthetically pleasing, they're well built, they'll stand the test of time. And you could see the city launching an ADU design competition, selecting the best ones, and creating a menu of 20 prototype ADUs that homeowners can choose from, which means homeowners can select one of the 20 pre-approved types, and they don't have to hire an architect, which saves them a lot of money. You can have one bedroom options, two bedroom, maybe one with a bunk bed for kids, some 500 square foot options, some 800 square foot. You could choose green ADUs to help the environment. And you could partner with the community college districts, which are training students in construction. And the students can build the prototype ADUs and get necessary job training skills. Additionally, you allow neighborhoods to do what's called overlays to control and regulate ADUs as they see fit. Now, this one addresses any potential pushback from neighborhoods. We should allow neighborhoods to come together and create an overlay which can place reasonable restrictions if they want restrictions. Maybe they only want to allow 2 ADUs per block, which would mitigate parking overcrowding if parking is already a big issue. They could put additional height restrictions on the ADUs, etc. The neighborhood would propose the overlay, it would go to the planning commission, and then to council. Now, a neighborhood couldn't ban ADUs altogether with an overlay, but they could do reasonable size limitations, material limits, etc. It's important, I think, to give neighborhoods a say in the process, and the overlays would do just that. And finally, the city should also create a host of incentives for homeowners to entice them to build an ADU for rent. After all, I mean, it's clearly in the city's interest to increase affordable options. So for example, the city could partner with financial institutions to offer low-interest loans to homeowners who want to build an ADU. The cost of building an ADU to the homeowner ranges, but $75,000 is a good ballpark number for what it costs. If you have a low-interest note, that means you can rent the ADU and still make a profit. And the presence of an ADU should increase your property values too. And the city should also consider tax breaks for homeowners that decide to build a rentable ADU. And I think the city should consider a very significant tax incentive to homeowners in high opportunity areas who build and rent their ADU to a lower income family with children that's earning less than, say, 50% area median income. Remember, research shows profound results for low-income kids that are able to access higher opportunity neighborhoods. Simply put, ADUs increase affordable options for moderate to low-income individuals in high opportunity areas. And given our mass poverty problem, the city shouldn't be shy to incentivize homeowners in high opportunity areas to rent ADUs to lower income families. Here's another reality. ADUs can help us correct decades of exclusionary zoning. The ugly reality is that zoning has always been used by cities to keep certain income groups out of certain neighborhoods. We zone affluent families to be exclusively single family. There are minimum lot size requirements, square footage requirements, large setbacks, prohibitions on ADUs. All of these things ensure that low income people can't afford to live in these places. It keeps poor people on the other side of town. Now check out this report from the Sightline Institute in Seattle. Basically, when you look at the top rated schools in Seattle, their attendance boundaries were heavily zoned for single family. 72% of the land around Seattle's top elementaries are zoned for single family. Struggling schools were more zoned with multifamily. This is how exclusionary zoning works. This is the definition of saying housing policy is school policy. So to all the education advocates out there, listen up. The way we zone our neighborhoods impacts student achievement. It's all connected. Overall, zoning has a substantial impact on our city, but zoning decisions are pretty mysterious. I mean, how many people can honestly say they've ever paid attention to residential zoning decisions? It happens quietly, no fanfare, but zoning determines who can afford to live in an area and who can't. Zoning can be used to promote mixed income neighborhoods, which is good, or it can be used to segregate people by income, which is bad. But too often it's a tool of segregation. Opportunity neighborhoods with only single-family zoning means that moderate and low-income people who can't afford to buy large single-family homes at Dallas's high prices must look elsewhere. Often this means looking in higher poverty areas that are zoned for multifamily apartment complexes, or if they can afford it, they just move to the suburbs. Teachers, coffee shop employees, nurse techs, bank tellers, there are fewer and fewer opportunity areas in which they can afford a single-family home in Dallas. You take a look at this map of Dallas zoning. In the yellow, you see entire areas zoned single family. In blue, you see other areas as multifamily. They're called districts, like islands of separate zoning. The promise of ADUs is that you can increase affordable options in single family districts. This enables folks who can only afford multifamily districts to access single family districts, which often means a higher opportunity neighborhood. And it means that those single-family homeowners get extra income from renting it out. We need to legalize a broader range of housing options, like ADUs, in majority single-family zones. This promotes more economically diverse neighborhoods and more economically diverse schools, which produce better outcomes. If a more permissive policy could enable Dallas to add, say, just 250 ADUs per year, that would mean over 1,200 ADUs over the next 5 years. And if the city had a robust incentive package, we could have even more. And as more ADUs come online, the city could create kind of an exchange or a database where people could go in and easily find available ADUs for rent across the entire city. That would put a significant dent in the affordable housing problem. And it's a heck of a lot cheaper than some of the other strategies that are out there. For example, we often talk about providing gap financing subsidies to real estate developers so that when they're building new market rate apartment complexes, they'll set aside a certain percentage of affordable units to be sold to moderate and low income folks. But these cash subsidies have to be really big. You need a pot of several $1,000,000 to provide gap financing for even a handful of these new projects, so the money doesn't really go a long way. Outside of some small incentives, the city doesn't really front the bill on ADUs. It would largely happen in the private space at the discretion of individual homeowners, with some common sense regulations and some city incentives. Planning commissioners and the Zoning Ordinance and Advisory Committee are already looking at this. There's more analysis that ought to be done, but it's something that we should seriously consider because the scale of our affordability problem is growing and is already a really big problem. Just last week, Nationwide Insurance identified Dallas as one of the most troubled housing markets in the entire nation. Why? Because home price growth is growing rapidly and our median income is declining. That is a horrible combination, and needlessly restrictive zoning isn't helping. ADUs represent a low-cost, high-yield, realistic strategy to help reverse this trajectory.